2 days of the coverage, I watched the news, and there was a lot of protest that was led by Jewish Voice for Peace, and they were led by people who opposed the Israeli attack on
Right here in the
civilians.
background.
And I remember quite well many of the Republican representatives in Congress came out and they were calling these the global intifada, the global jihad. I love it when they say jihad. Jihad. It's very funny. Or they say like these are, and I quote, Iranian-backed jihadists. And I said, wait a minute, but most of those people are Jewish. Those people who took over the Capitol, the same people who took over Central Station in New York, which is known as the biggest civil disobedience event in America in the last 2 decades, they were all Jewish.
Really?
And then I find Nikki Haley saying anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism.
See, that's why you have to be so mindful on the media. Because the media will paint a picture that they only want you looking at this way. Whereas if you want to listen to the media and you listen to some of the real sources of what's going on, that picture does not look the same. So, you know, that's.
And then I remember it's like, oh, Jewish people in America are saddened by the fact that they are not citizens of America or citizens of the world, but they are citizens of Israel, and they have to back Israel in whatever they do. And these are not my words; these are the words of Jon Stewart. He went out and he said it's very, very important to divide these two. And what is very, very interesting.
Would you compare that on that specific point to the way that people try and say all Palestinians are responsible and accountable for what Hamas do?
Yes, yeah.
In other words, I think you can be very critical of Israeli government and their policies and Benjamin Netanyahu and the politicians, but that doesn't mean that you have to take that criticism to innocent Israelis who may have exactly the same criticism themselves.
And this is why it is very important to have these kind of discussions. Because
True, exactly.
The funniest, not the funniest, the saddest thing that I saw is the people that were in so much support of Israel are anti-Semite themselves. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, she said like, oh, those are, I send my aides, and they took pictures of the protesters. Basically, she's surveilling protesters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is very known for a very famous 2018, where she blamed the California fires on a Jewish space laser gun. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
I never heard about that.
Oh.
Wait, is that the same laser gun that was been talked about on the fire thing?
I don't know.
A Jewish, like, really?
Interesting.
So my question is Bassem? It sounds more like he's more free Palestine or
Left leaning.
No, that's American politics. I'm talking about on overseas. He seems like he's more he's more Palestinian because Egyptian in Egypt biblically, I think it is, but I could be wrong. And as soon as I say anything slight left, people in the comment section. But let's go.
Yeah, I still feel like just listening to what he's saying, I want to listen further, but he sounds like he still might be a little bit more left leaning with his views. I want to keep listening before I just make that complete observation.
When he talks about Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think he's on.
Pinpointing. Or maybe he's
I think it's very
know.
neutral, but I think he's strong leaning to Israel and Palestine. It's still more like a Palestinian stance he takes, but because I want to say Egyptian, but American, I think it sounds a little bit more neutral to me. He doesn't because he'll talk about any political leader, but it does sound a little bit left leaning because he's talking about only the people that are on the left. But let's hear it out.
No, on the right.
On the right.
Yeah.
My correction.
Jewish investors, Rothschild, Feinstein, anything that ends with Stein, because that of course sounds Jewish. They put a satellite and shooting laser beams to. It's and not just her. You have Steve Skoulas. Thank you so much. He is now the Speaker of the House, and he has been invited before for an organization that was funded by David Duke, the founder of the KKK. You have Kevin McCarthy, who is the former minority speaker.
So to answer your question right there, anybody that's throwing up and they talk about when David Duke was supported the left, not the right. David Duke had more. The Klan side supported on the left side.
Well, he's talking about the Speaker of the House is Mike Johnson, so I don't know who he's talking about. The person's name that he just mentioned, Mike Johnson, is the new
He's talking about past tense, not current.
Oh, okay.
But I
Okay.
need to know who the Speaker of the House is. The Speaker was the person he's talking about. Was he left or right? So I got to do my research.
Leader of the Republican Party in the House, and he accused Jewish billionaires of rigging the midterm. So how come those people
So it
are
does sound
accusing
left.
us of anti-Semites? So here's the thing. So let's go to the equation that Nikki Haley put on Twitter. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. No, it is true. People who hate Jews, they're also anti-Zionists. It is true. And you could be someone who hate Zionists, who don't like Zionism, and you are Semite. You could even be Jewish. And guess what? You could be a Zionist, like those people, supporting Israel, and at the same time you hate the Jews, because the chant "Jews will not replace us," these echoed in Charlottesville. It did not echo in Gaza. I mean, in Gaza they say worse stuff in between the bombing on their downtime. And these are the same people who are seen with Nick Fuentes, with
Donald Trump was
Stephen Bannon, and you know what's most
Donald Trump
interesting?
had him for dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
And all of those people are buddies with Benjamin Netanyahu. So how does this work? How does this work? And you know the people who speak against this, like Jon Stewart, like Bernie Sanders, like Naomi Klein, what do they call these people? What do they call them? Self-hating Jews. And you know what else now they call them? They call them capos. Capos. You know what's capos? Capos, basically these were the Jewish inmate in Auschwitz that were forced by the Nazis to stand as guards on their own inmates. You see how degrading this is. And this is the way to shut down conversation. Anti-Semite, Islamophobe, you hate America, you hate the military, you hate Egypt, war on Christmas. This is how you shut an environment that does not allow disagreement is not an environment made for growth. It's an environment made for control.
Let me ask you this. Say, take the student protests in
Yes,
America,
sir.
at universities. I have no problem instinctively with students protesting. It's actually part of the DNA of being a student. Right? But I do have a problem with two things. One, the protests that happened almost immediately after October the 7th, within hours, which were clearly, deeply, deliberately inflammatory and hurtful to Jewish people. Secondly, I have a real problem with the students who were beaming direct pro-Hamas slogans onto buildings on campuses in America. You know, I'm all for free speech, and I really am. The whole show is predicated on that. But not to the point where you see Jewish students barricaded into libraries.
Right.
Because a mob is descending on them. There is a distinction to me between people who are obviously overtly, I mean, there was a professor at Cornell University who was literally seen in public shouting how exhilarated he felt by the attacks of October the 7th. He still hasn't been fired, that guy. I think that crosses a line. Do you?
Yeah, I do not like this way. I mean, I can understand why, but I don't condone it. I would never, because you have to understand these people, again, I'm not supporting them. I just want to make sure about two things. The reason that I started with anti-Semitism, because I wanted to make sure to clear any confusion that when I speak about Israel, I'm speaking about Israel.
Yes.
When I'm speaking about Jewish people, I'm speaking about Jewish people.
Yes.
When I'm speaking about Zionists, I'm speaking about Zionists. It would very, because
No, I think it was very powerful when you did that.
Yeah, I have
and
to be careful.
That's the first thing you did, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, but at the same time, when I tell you why does that happen, it doesn't mean that I condone it. There's a difference between explanation and justification.
Makes sense.
Those people who are exhilarated, the way that they see, this is the same reason why people were so happy about the interview. What do they see? They see Israel as a criminal state who is killing their people, and at the same time, they are supported by the international community and by America. They have no guns, they have no superpower backing them. All they have is just a feeling of happiness, like, yes, our enemies that we cannot touch them has been hurt. All they can think about, that these are their enemies that have been hurt, right? I'm not condoning this, but again, like when people were celebrating terrorist attacks, you know, against Western targets. Of course, I don't condone that. But why? Because those people has been from a very young age. What have they seen? They're not being heard by the media. The plight and the suffering of the brothers in Israel, in Palestine, in the Arab world, are not being heard. People in Iraq, you know, like when America and Britain invaded Iraq, right? What the Arabs saw? It's like two superpowers are coming in on just regular people. So whenever there was like a bomb or like an attack on American troops, people would celebrate. Yeah, they're our enemies. Emotions are very inflammatory, and it is not right. But those people had nothing else. All they can is just like shout, All they say is like to rejoice. It is not right. Again, I'm explaining why is this happening, because it's like, yeah, if I cannot get you, I'm just gonna scratch your eyes. I'm gonna scratch your eyes because you've been beating me all the time, and you have the whole international community backing you up, and all I can do is scream. Is it right? No. But it is understandable. Again, it's not the right thing. But no, it's not like understandable. It's like, oh, no. But again, it is an explanation. Now, hate. And again, this is another way why this has been magnified in the media so much. What does the Western audience see? They see people rejoicing for the death of innocent civilians in Israel.
Right.
This is what have the Arabs seen for years on the Arab world. For example, if you look up Sidrot cinema, this is in 2014 when Israel was bombing Gaza as usual, and the Israelis in the Sidrot, the kibbutz.
Just on that, when he said that, bombing as usual, the comment that you just heard too. That's why just now, just getting revelation, or even as I'm listening to him, is to be mindful on picking political sides thoroughly.
Yeah.
Like, like I said, y'all know we're pro-Trump, but you still you want to be mindful, because when these sides start yelling this and that, and then they're yelling this and that versus a war that's going on since when I read my Bible, what's the agenda behind either shouting this or that? So it makes you sit back and be like, I'd rather just sit back, and I just need to sit back and pay attention, because the things that are going on predate our beginning on my Bible. So why should I jump in with a stance and say anything that's in my Bible from the beginning? I don't have no right to say nothing.
Especially if you have not gone back and really done a deep dive with why, where this really stems from and how they got to this point. And even then, I would still be reluctant, to say, okay, I'm going to support this group. I'm going to support this group. You really need to clear and have a clear understanding as to what's going on. I know, who I stand for. And, I just feel like based off of the research that I've done and what I've prayed about, I feel like I'm clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the settlement, they went on a hill, and they had popcorn, and they had drinks, and they were like watching the show, and they were cheering with every rocket coming down. This is what Western people didn't see that.
Well, somebody found a tweet actually of mine from 2014 in which I said, at what point does what Israel is currently doing to the Palestinian people become terrorism? And because I've always said, I've spoken about this a lot over the years, and I've always tried to be extremely fair-minded, albeit nobody really wants you to be fair-minded. They want you to take a side. But that was clear that my thinking back then was that they were absolutely overstepping the mark.
Absolutely. But again, to the point of rejoicing.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but like if you, for example, Google the wedding of hate. This is like a Jewish wedding in Israel where they were celebrating the arsons and the burning of Palestinians.
But to be clear, I've seen lots of videos.
No, but like, I'm not talking to you, Piers.
No, I know.
I'm talking to the Western audience because I want to see, like, I want to say, like, this is what they see. I mean, for example, there is a very famous video for Samuel Abu Za'anin, who is like a young kid that he was shot point blank by an Israeli soldier, and he was not allowed to have any medical attention. And as his dead body was being put into the ambulance, the Jewish settlers were cheering. So for an Arab audience, this is what we see every day. So when they say, oh, we heard them back, we heard their people like they heard back, it is not right. But this is what hate does. It escalates, it feeds each other. Radicalism feeds it. It is terrible, and it is just like a vicious circle. So I would like to do something that is very interesting to me. When I invited Jon Stewart to my show, as much of like a reception that if you see on the YouTube, people just like, we had to cut the 5-minute standing ovation for broadcast. People were on their feet for 5 minutes. They could not believe it. I remember Jon Stewart telling me I could never imagine that a Jewish guy from New Jersey would have that kind of reception in Cairo. And yet, on the internet, people who would have, what? You brought a Jew on your show? Why you are with a Jew? Yes, hate is there. Yes. So, and the thing is, like, why we do not see each other, people in the Middle East, people in the West, that we do not put ourselves in each other's shoes. And I want to do something very interesting today. I want to give. I like telling stories, and I'm going to tell you a very nice story.
Tell away.
This is the story. surprise, surprise, of the suffering and the plight of the Jewish people. And I want to say that because it is very interesting when you see the trauma and the suffering that the people on the other side went through, you might understand why they're coming so. So this is, see this? This is a map of all of the history of the expulsion of the Jews in Europe.
He had that map
I
last
have
time.
never seen a minority being kicked around this much, right? And of course, this comes back to the, the whole idea about the original sin, that you have betrayed Jesus Christ. The blood of Jesus is on your hands. And then comes the 11th century. At that time, Jewish people were not allowed to own land. They were just peasants.
That's
Even
right.
Some of the professions were not even allowed to participate in it. But they were allowed to do one thing, usury, money lending, because it was prohibited by the Catholic Church to engage into that. So what happens when you work in money? You get richer, right? And those Jews lived in ghettos. Now, ghettos was not just like isolated neighborhoods in cities. Sometimes ghettos were outside the city. This is like how isolated they were. And in those ghettos, they have to pay gold to the mayor or the governor or the...
Yo, this is so dope. He's telling how the origin, how the Jewish community became so rich and vast. This is so dope because I always wanted to know how the Jewish community have so much power and control, and this is what the story is leading to. This is so dope. I've been trying to figure this out.
So I was sitting here thinking, like, he's talking about and how Jewish people have suffered since the beginning of time, since Christ's time. So I was just wondering, so have they suffered more than African American or African black people slaves? How?
Yes, because this what you got to predate Bible times. You got to predate what's up? What's wrong?
It's hanging out.
Yeah, get it.
No, babe. You need a mirror, boo. Let me see. Turn around.
Get it with your thumb. Not on my shirt. Why you got a whole napkin right there?
It ain't even nothing there. Like a little, like skin.
Is it gone?
It's gone.
I'm leaving this in.
Oh my God. Okay.
So they would see...
But what I was saying is like, okay, wait a minute. We are always talking about slavery, how we can't still get ahead, how we still need reparations. And I'm listening to this and listening at their suffering and how this has been going on since way back when. So now that I'm thinking about this, have they suffered a little bit more than us? Because, we always want to be the ones that have suffered the most and have had so much, hardship done to us.
Yeah. The Jewish suffrage, now when you think about it, not only was the Jewish suffrage, Jewish suffrage was tougher than slaves. Because, like you said, blacks have always enslaved blacks. Even in the country before it, it's always been a trade of blacks. Mm-hmm. But also, Jewish were enslaved biblically way longer. Mm-hmm. Especially when you come to the 12 tribes of Israel. Mm-hmm. So there has been slavery that's going on, and then but this it's going to the story of how he's saying what the wealth side of it become, because I don't understand how it come from slavery to so much power. But let's go.
Yeah.
Richer. I need more taxes. So they pay tax. What happens when you have a business and they increase your rent? You increase your service, increase the tax. So what happened? The Christians started to default, and suddenly the image of the greedy Jew was created. Shiloh, merchant of Venice. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. Like never did I see a creature I can't remember that. Never did I saw a creature that looked like a man so keen and greedy. Confound of a man. English. I messed it up. Anyways, but this was the image, greedy Jew, the greedy Jew. This was created because of their conditions. And it became worse in 1095, when Pope Urban II called for the first crusade to go and save the birth of Jesus from the unbelievers Muslim. And this crusade did not kill a single Muslim. You know how many people they killed? 2,000 Jews. Because it's like, wait, the non-believers are all over there. Why? So they went to it's called the Crusades of the Rhineland. So they went to the Jewish community because, hey, we own the money, so let's kill them better than paying them. And then came the plague. And then all of the things like, oh, they're killing babies, who would do that to a baby, And they accused them of poisoning the well. This was the kind of oppression that the Jewish people went through. Fast forward 19th century, there was like the Eastern Jew in Ukraine and Russia, and there was the Western Jews in Europe. those people in the East, the Eastern Jews, had to immigrate because there were pogroms and they were like, kicked out. And at a certain point, the people in the West, especially in England, it's like, there are too many Jews. We need a solution. The solution for what? For the Jewish problem. So it's like we need to get rid of them. And you know what? Palestine was not even on the A list. Palestine was on the B list. Because England proposed 6,000 square miles in Uganda for the Jews, 1903. And the reason why Palestine was not on the list, that it was objected by a lot of rabbis that said, like, it's a promised land, but only when the Messiah comes. But there were other options: Argentina, South Africa, Uganda, Madagascar. And eventually they said, all right, let's do Palestine. So they went to Palestine in 1914. There was 700,000 people living in Palestine, 3% were Jewish. 1917, Balfour Declaration. Arthur Balfour, he called the Jewish people in England that they are alien and hostile race. And the thing is,
That's almost like when you look in the Bible, back when the Israelites were giving, they were from not Nebuchadnezzar, Pharaoh. First Pharaoh, he gave them rights to have land over in Egypt.
Okay.
And then they built, that's how the, 12 tribes where all the origin of, all, that's why all the people, all the Israelites had grown massive, because population and things like that. And then you come to another king came in order and was like, no, these people are a threat to us. They're coming. They're gonna overrun us, enslave them. So that seems like what he's talking about here.
only Jewish member of the parliament, of the English parliament, Lord Montenegro, he objects, like, these are British citizens, we should not kick them out. So they pushed him, but it was not going fast enough. Came the Nazis. And then it was not about the solution anymore. It was the end losing, the final solution by Hitler, because he needed an answer for the Jewish question, the Judefrage. And then, as you see, the Holocaust happened, the most orchestrated, industrialized, horrible genocide in our modern time. 6 million Jews died. So it accelerated, and they went, first of all, they left Eastern Europe, and they went to West Europe, and they went to America, and they were turned down, and they were pushed towards Palestine. So by 1948, right before the declaration of the State of Israel, there were 2 million people living there. Only 30% of them was Jews. So the whole idea of like a land without a people to a people without a land, it was a marketing thing. They were already Palestinians. So suddenly, from our perspective, the Jewish problem is not a Jewish problem, is not a Middle Eastern problem, is not an Arab problem, it is a European problem. It was pushed on us together with the guilt, because now we are the anti-Semite. Now we are the Jewish hater. And not just that, they took land. So people look at this like, why are we even, we had a lot of refugees coming in. And during that, there was a lot of, as you know, Zionist militia, the Aragon, the Haganah, all of these people were killing Palestinians. The famous massacre of Deir Yassin. You're talking about the atrocities of October 7th, it's horrible. But in the Arab mind, there is Deir Yassin, where there is an incredible movie called Tantoura, Tantoura, where the Israeli members of those militias, they talk about the atrocities that they did, including opening up the pregnant women bellies and having bets if the boy inside is a boy or a girl.
Oh.
It is one of the most horrific, and they talk about it, some talk about with regret, and some talk about with pleasure.
Oh.
We did that, right? So you have even
That's so horrible.
King David. I think your Prime Minister, Mr. Sunak, was there. And if I was British, I would question this. Because as you know, King David was bombed by the Aragon militias.
I'm thinking David.
91 British soldiers died. I don't know, if I was British, how come my Prime Minister would have the nerve to stay in that hotel? I mean, the ghost of the 91 British soldiers, that must be haunting for them, you see? So when you see all of that, and you see that suddenly, overnight, 1948, there were 1.5 million Palestinians, half of them, 3/4 of them were overnight pushed into refugees.
Yeah.
And this is why it's called the Nakba, the catastrophe. So now we have all of this building up into the minds. And suddenly this was like a conflict, a hate, a problem that we didn't have to do anything with. This was basically pushed on us by the Europeans. You see, this is why it is important to say that. And I'm not saying that just like, oh, let's wipe out the state of Israel, let's like push them in the sea. No, but it's important when you talk about the conflict that you talk about the root causes, right? No, there was like a vibrant Palestinian culture happening over there. And right now they are erasing this culture. Suddenly I'm thinking of like Israeli feta cheese. Israeli hummus. Oh, that's an insult. Israeli hummus. Come on. I mean, take the land, but leave the hummus, man. I mean, come on. I mean, that's not fair. You are someone who's always spoken against culture, cancel culture. Right now, a whole culture is cancelled.
Let me ask you this. Jonathan
Wow.
Freeman is a top Jewish journalist for the
Pause
Guardian
real quick.
newspaper. A very interesting column last week in which he said, at the root of all this, you could argue you have two sets of people with just cause. And they believe passionately in their just cause. And he was sort of advising people not to take sides unless you really understand the history.
Okay.
Would you agree with that? Would you agree that both sides have legitimate just cause? Not with the methodology that's taken place, and you've given an extremely detailed analysis of the build-up to what happened in 48. To me, it's pretty clear, 700, 800,000 Palestinians were displaced from their
Overnight.
homes, and it should never have happened. And that has been absolutely, I think, the root cause for so much resentment. But can you, at the heart of this debate, agree with Jonathan that you could argue there's just cause on both sides?
There
behind
is a cause on both sides, but I'm walking on a tightrope here because
Yeah.
I'm not a Palestinian.
Yeah.
But from the Palestinian point of view, there
Okay. So I was wrong. That's right. He's being Egyptian. That doesn't mean Palestinian. But I was just kind of putting those two areas too close together. But he's Egyptian.
Okay.
Egyptian.
there's a lot of people. I mean, there are 2.2 million people living in Gaza. There are 3.5 million people living in the West Bank. There is 350,000 people living in East Jerusalem, and there is like 6 or 7 million people living outside. Those people, the Palestinians that were pushed out, they do not have the right to go back. Right now, if you meet Palestinians, you'll see them wearing a necklace with a key. That key is their house that they were kicked out from in Yafa and Haifa. You know, like my wife's family comes from Ramla, which is 50 miles from Gaza. And according to the law, those people have absolutely no right to go back. Even if you are a Palestinian with an American passport, they give you hell in order to go in. And yet, a Jewish person born anywhere in the world, born in Poland, born in Ukraine, no question asked, he can jump on a plane, land in Israel, and get the Israeli citizen and take a house that most probably belonged to a Palestinian. So it is not just like, it is an ongoing injustice that has been happening. Now, I mean,
Where would you criticize, if you're being fair-minded, where would you criticize from 48 onwards the behavior of the Arab side?
well, put yourself in the Arab side. At 1948, you constituted 70% of the population. Suddenly, the UN is giving you 48% of the land, right? Not just that. I mean, the Arab regimes, because they did terribly. And see, this is the thing. Like, Arab nationalism at the height of these people feed on each other, you know, because it's very, very important to have a problem. Oh, it's Israel, and then for Israel, oh, it's the Palestinian. It's a very good distraction. I mean, sometimes I feel that like the Palestinian cause is very useful for both sides to stay there as attention because it's always a way to reflect. But, and this is a very important question because in the mind of the Western audience, they always thought of the Palestinian resistance or the Palestinian side as like Islamic, as militant. No, as a matter of fact, some of the early suicide bombers were female Christian Palestinians. Because they, like the area, you know, they were fighting for a land. The whole idea of Islamization of the whole cause came very later. As a matter of fact, you will find this very interesting because when I saw this, I did not believe it. This, you know, the Fatah movement, which is the PLO, the Fatah. This was their slogan. Can you see? You see, there's a crescent, a cross, and a menorah. And they say unitary, democratic, non-sectarian. So basically, in the 1960s, Fatah were basically marijuana smoking,
different beliefs.
hippies.
Wow.
And yet that didn't work, right? And the thing is, I always hear that like Arabs were giving so many chances for peace. That is not true. As a matter of fact, all along history, Israel didn't give an inch of land by peace. 73 war, they gave back Sinai because 2006 they went out of south of Lebanon because of the resistance they have. Even the disengagement of Gaza, they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart because they had too much casualties. And even the Oslo Accords, the peace treaty, the one that Isaac Rabin and got the Nobel Prize for, they did it because of the Intifada. So what is the message that Israel is giving to the Arabs? I will never give you anything with peaceful resolution. You will always have to fight for it.
Do you not think that, for example, I mean, Bill Clinton feels this very strongly, that there was a great deal to be done, and Arafat, just in the end, having indicated the whole time that if we got to this place, there would be a deal, just walked away. That was the closest that everybody came, and that actually, I mean, could Clinton have done any more than he tried to do then?
I am not, again, that's why it's very important to have people who are much more qualified than me to talk about this. But two things I can say about that. Number one, the whole thing about the Oslo Accord, there was a video for Netanyahu who was talking to the settlement offer 2001, and he was bragging about sabotaging. He was talking to us like, I sabotage. It's like there was going to be no peace. Yeah, you've seen that, right? Yeah. And in that video, if you remember, when he was saying like you have to hit them hard, 2001, no Hamas at the time. They were talking about the Palestinian Authority. We have to hit them, we have to kill them, we have to make them feel the pain. And then one of them says like Bibi, but wouldn't America kind of just like, so what? The American public is easily manipulated. 80% are with it. It is absurd. And as a new American, where I can have the privilege of being retrospectively angry, I said like, this guy is mocking the government and the people who have been with him all the time. It's like, oh, they can be easily manipulated. They can do it. And even, by the way, even Isaac Rabin, the one who actually did the peace accord.
So do you think that's...
He was known famously for the way to actually beat those children is...
So do you think the American people can be easily manipulated?
Yes, it's by the media.
Yeah.
All we need is the media. And then the only way I think the way that we're less manipulated is when we're involved, so that we physically seeing what's going on. But when we just sitting over here looking at our TV, looking at what the news tell you, manipulation. That's why I'm saying that's when it comes to those biblical wars, you gotta step back.
Yeah.
You gotta step back. Unless you're in them trenches, God got you over there seeing what's really going on. You better step back, because then you be taking a stance, you be in the wrong.
Yeah.
Their bones with the broken bones policy. They will like get those kids and break their bones on the pavement. So this has the whole idea about like Israel wanted peace and Arabs only wanted to fight is a very bad representation.
I actually think as it's gone on, the genuine will on both sides for peace has not existed.
No.
I think it's been a deceit to the world.
No, I'm sorry.
And to the relative groups of people on both sides.
The official...
And actually a betrayal of it.
The official stand of the Palestinian Authority, and again, I cannot speak, it is very difficult to do this. The official stand of the Palestinian Authority is that we are just happy with 22% of the land. Just give us like that. Yes, there are people that dissent, but the thing is, you cannot just say, okay, let's talk about peace. And then you take away my land. Let's talk about peace. And there's a kind of like passive aggressiveness happening. Oh, let's talk about it, but I'm going to build settlements. I'm going to suffocate your cities and your villages.
You see, I think that has been incredibly inflammatory.
Yes.
Worsening the situation. I think putting back the chance of peace. I mean, Netanyahu, I interviewed Netanyahu earlier this year in the middle of the big social protests in his own country. And I couldn't understand what he thought he was doing, except that it seemed to me political expediency, that he had to get power, again, he had put a bunch of right-wing headbangers into his cabinet who have incredibly bad records, speak in an incredibly incendiary way about Palestinians, for example. And he did this for power. And then he launched, because they were pushing him to do it, a ridiculous assault on the integrity of the Supreme Court, the independence of the Supreme Court. And many Israelis rose up. So Netanyahu has become, to me, a big problem. Right, and the people, all the polling shows that. Israeli people are very unhappy with Netanyahu. I don't think he's ever going to actually want to forge peace. And in fact, I think he was instrumental with Hamas in wanting to keep them in power because he felt that that would create the split with the Palestinians, with two political groups, and that would be good for Israel.
And it was leaked in a Likud conference in 2019 that he was bragging about giving Hamas money because this is a way that we can keep Palestinians divided. And yet, so we'll never have one. So this is a guy who was.
But look, we can agree about Netanyahu, I think.
No,
right?
but not just Netanyahu. There's a book.
And I would say most of his cabinet.
There's a book called The Fear of Peace. It's by Moshe Zimmerman. And he's an Israeli historian, and he said, like, the average Israeli citizen does not have a vision of peace. Because for 70 years, this is a country that has been, the military, the war has been going on for, they have been expanding because of war. The military.
I always wonder why, I heard him say that in the past, the last time he said, 75 years, but and it's been way before 75 years. Like, I wonder why he counts at 70, 75 years when this war and issues have been going on there for hundreds.
And then now it's making me think, like, I really got to go back and do way more research than I did, because
how do you know where to research at? How do you know where to start at?
I like to go to, reputable sites like the History Channel, National Geographics, and then I'll go and look at some scholarly articles about this, people who are experts in the field and they've written, they've done the research, and it's there. So those are like some of the other resources that I will go and read, because I'm confused.
I am too.
I'm not really clear as to, like, I did the video on Snapper at TV about like how it started, and there's so many clips and pieces of videos as to how it began on YouTube, but I really need to go and get a clear understanding, like even from the biblical, as to what started this. Yeah. And now the mindset of the leaders and all that. I need to kind of go and dig way deeper so I can be more clear.
It is taking over. So the whole idea of peace is not even there. It's not just Netanyahu. Like you have, I remember you have interviewed Naftali Bennett.
Yes.
And I think you tweeted that that was like a very kind of reasonable take. Yeah.
I don't think I said reasonable. No.
Yeah. But like this Naftali, he went after Queen Rania, and he called up shame on Queen Rania.
No, I didn't say reasonable. I just said this. I did a fire emoji.
Yeah.
I just said what he was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you about Queen Rania, and let's ask about, since you've raised it, because Queen Rania accused the West of a glaring double standard. She said it's the first time in modern history there's such human suffering, and the world is not even calling for a ceasefire. So the silence is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit. Now, other people said, well, okay, if you feel that strongly, why aren't you taking in any Palestinians? Why is Egypt not taking Palestinians? Why does the Arab world want to constantly attack Israel without actually offering any place to go for the Palestinians? And what do you say to that?
That is exactly what Israel wants. And that is exactly what actually starts Third War III. This is the war solution. These are Palestinians. These are their land. And then suddenly take them. Why? So they've been basically kicked around from their homes. And now another country should take them? You see what will happen? Imagine this. Now. And because Israeli official has been talking openly about this. It's like, why don't they just go in Sinai? Why they go? You know what would happen? Those people are going to be pushed in Sinai. And with any population, 2 million people, they are living in refugee camp. What do you think will happen? Unrest, chaos. And then after a few years, the Western media will come with their cameras like, oh, look at those Arabs. Oh, they're killing each other. Oh, Israel is good that they got rid of them. And then they will go to the West Bank. And suddenly those 3.5 million people push into Jordan. The whole idea, why does Jordan take them? Why does Egypt take them? The same question. Europe has 44 countries. Why don't they take Israel? America has 50 states. Why don't they give them Florida? I mean, we seem to complain about Florida the whole time. Why don't they just give Israel? The whole idea was like, oh, you're Arabs, you're all the same. No. Because what would happen then? So Israel will move into Jordan? It's like, oh, Saudi, why don't you take the Jordanian? So this is not a solution. This is not a solution.
Bassem, I hear you. I'm not taking a position either way. Let me ask you directly.
But I want to say something about what Queen Rania said.
Okay.
The whole idea about the West.
Yeah.
I think that in 3 weeks, Israel morally corrupted the West like no other. I think the West will have a lot of time to recover because for years, the West has been telling us, oh, look, we're liberal. We're all about human rights. All are equal. Adopt our values. And then suddenly, well, you don't want to even to cease. We don't want to even tell Israel to stop. And suddenly we woke up and we found McDonald's are giving free meals to the Israeli because like nothing will make you feel better after killing a bunch of Palestinian kids than a Happy Meal.
So let me ask you.
They have a total.
Well,
Yo, that's why
wow.
I'm super mindful about this country, because you have to, like I said,
Does the
most Christian believers, most people, no, let me not say most, but the Christian perspective is we believe in Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a Jew. So being a Christian, we're supposed to represent our Lord and Savior on the Israelite and the Jewish community. But I don't think God was telling it because these aren't your original Israelites. These people, Israelites and such as Palestine, Hamas people, Palestinians, have all done wrong. So to take a stance on either, when this country tells you to take a stance on one, run.
Well, you need to do your own research.
Like
and
Ukraine. I'm sorry, like I stand with Ukraine.
You need to do your
I
own
don't stand with
research,
Ukraine.
and you need to really dig deep and be clear and pray and ask God for clarity and understanding because that's what I need.
Yes.
Because listening to him and how he's explaining things, the way the media has projected and what has been shown is that, Israel has been the one who's been somewhat of the victim.
Yes.
But now you start listening
given
and you
it-
start reading other things and you start seeing other things, and then it seems like it's flipped. Like the Palestinians really were, or they
victims.
both have been victimized by each other.
Yep.
But who, where did it initiate? Where was this birth? This is where I need to get clarity and understanding for myself without all of the influence and how the media just keeps portraying. But still, there should not be where it's a mob of a group of people attacking another group. It still should be, regardless of the ethnicity of either side, it should not be that. It should not be that.
And I think the real meat of what you're looking for is first, in my household, is God. Two is doing your own research, because anything that comes to you free and easy, like the media giving you the information, stay away from it because they're giving you what they want, as it might not be the truth.
And the society, and now the society that we're in is taking matters in their own hands. They are willing to do harm to someone else based off of their belief versus, being forgiving or, really thinking about their actions before they attack somebody.
Exactly.
So this brings me to Hamas, okay? So what Israel will say, because they say it to me every time they come on the program, whoever from Ehud Barak to Natalie Bennett, whoever it may be, they say, look, we suffered such a catastrophic terror attack on October the 7th that we have decided we are going to get rid of Hamas. There are 40,000 or so Hamas terrorists in their eyes who need to be got rid of. And I do believe they're terrorists. Only terrorists can commit the kind of act of terrorism we saw. So on that point, can we agree on that? Do you believe Hamas is a terror group?
It is classified by America as I'm not a big fan of Hamas, and they are a militant group. Does like stuff like.
Are they terrorists, do you think?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So we agree on this. So you have 40,000 of them living in Gaza amongst the civilian population. If Israel has decided to eliminate a terror group, Hamas, as the world did with ISIS, for example, and I think there are a lot of parallels given the way they behaved on October the 7th to ISIS. How do you do it? How do you do it if you don't do it the way Israel is currently trying to do it?
Exactly not the way that Israel does it, because if you have one of the most advanced military powers in the world, and it takes you 3 weeks, 9,000 Palestinian civilian death, 21,000 injured. As we are talking right now, Israel just bombed Jabalia, which is a known refugee camp. This is not self-defense. Like one of the most questions like, does Israel have the right to defend itself? This is a no-value question. This is a no-value question.
Well, I would ask a different point. I would say not only do they have a right to defend themselves, which every country would after a terror attack, right? But they actually have a duty and responsibility to their population to try and stop that happening again to them.
They've been doing...
Which makes
and
sense.
I do understand, and I agree with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it takes you all of that time, all of these civilians, to take out a few hundred guerrilla fighters...
We don't know how many of the people
few
who died.
thousand.
We don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but Bassem, you don't know and I don't.
We don't know.
Right.
Like,
We don't even know if the casualty numbers are correct because they're all coming from Hamas.
and we
The
should,
health authority-
and we should believe Israel?
No, not necessarily, no. No, I don't believe either side.
But here's
See,
my
that's
problem
messed
with
But
up.
that.
here's my point. I don't think we should assume that we know these statistics
Okay.
are correct. I don't think we should assume we know exactly how many children are being killed. We do know a lot have been killed, so the moral argument remains the same. But we don't know how many Hamas terrorists have been killed in the last 3 weeks. We just don't know, do we?
So basically, we're dealing with a very incompetent military force that has been sucking America dry for years, and then they cannot do the job.
But how else do they get rid of Hamas?
Not like that.
How do they do it?
I don't know, but not like that, because they've been trying
But
the
you've got to
same.
have another-
They have. First of all, I'm not a military expert. Second of
No, I
all,
understand.
they've been trying the same thing for years. They go in. This is not an eye for an eye anymore. This is an eye, a limb, a life, a house,
But
a
they don't-
neighborhood,
they
a whole
don't see-
population for an eye.
But
That
they
is-
don't see. I mean, your friend Ben Shapiro, that you particularly despise.
Oh, I love Ben Shapiro. He's very smart.
Oh, yeah, but you've been very critical of him, and that's fair enough, and I'm sure he would be of you. But when I asked him about proportion, he said, I don't care about a proportionate response.
So let's kill
Right?
civilians as
Hamas
until
did
we're done.
this, so we are going to get rid
Yeah,
of Hamas.
but he,
It's not, in his eyes, it wasn't eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It was this group of terrorists did this, and we are now going to rid the world of these terrorists.
and this is very important to look at things in context. When you see how Israelis talk inside their community. There was a very famous post by Uriel Eritzol. He is the speechwriter of Netanyahu. He said, what is so horrific about understanding that the whole Palestinian people are our enemies? All of them are enemy combatants. We should kill them, kill their mother, destroy their homes, the homes that they raised those snakes, so no snakes will be raised in this house anymore. And this was reposted by Ali Chaket, which is the minister of, wait for it, justice. It's not about Hamas anymore. It is not about Hamas. They can tell you it's about Hamas, but it's not about Hamas. It is basically, they have said it many times, Piers. This is a way to kind of push them into Sinai. This is not about eradicating Hamas. This ship has sailed. I am sorry, but anybody who still believes that this is about Hamas is stupid, because they...
See, I don't agree with that.
Really?
No, because I think...
But why there...
I'll tell you why I don't agree.
There are like 100 people
I think
killed
any
in Gaza.
country,
and
any
West Bank.
country that suffered the kind of terror attack that Israel suffered, with the kind of death toll that occurred that day, 1,500 plus people, grandmothers, kids, young women being raped, kidnapped, beheaded, it's been reported, and so on. Well, you can raise an eyebrow. I mean, they found a young woman's skull, right?
But what about
severed
the babies that were beheaded?
Well, there was a report, and you and I had this discussion on air. You falsely quoted me, and I wanted to clarify that with you in person. You thought I'd said that 40 babies had been beheaded.
So what did you say?
I never said that.
What did you say?
I said it's been reported that 40 babies were killed, some of whom had been beheaded. That's what I said.
Yeah. Totally,
there's
totally different. Yeah.
It's a very different. Well, it is different.
Yes.
You accept it?
English is a second language, so...
So they're
things
different
might-
things. Saying 40 babies have been beheaded, and 40 babies have been reported to have been killed, including
So
some
where are those
who were
beheaded babies?
Well, apparently journalists are being shown utterly horrific
Okay,
footage.
this is...
You know, that is something that's been shown. I happen to be on Twitter, and I was, looking at content related stuff, and then I was like, this isn't real. And I looked at it. Oh my God, this is real. It seemed so graphic that it doesn't seem like it could be fake. It seemed like it was made in a film, but I was like, yo, this is real.
Wow.
This is stuff that, can only be shown on certain platforms because it's too much. It's just like it's like, is this what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
This comes to a very important question about credibility. Again, I'm not condoning what happened on October 7th, but I'm not a journalist. But as a journalist, wouldn't you take anything that an authority would say with a grain of thought?
Yes.
Especially if this authority have a long history of lying. And I'm just going to give a few examples. 1996, they bombed Kana. It's a refugee camp. They killed 106 people. And despite that they knew it's a refugee camp. They said, oh, maybe it's a one-time off. 2006, they bombed Kana again. 2014, they killed 2 teenagers at a checkpoint. They denied, as usual, but CNN was there. So they said, we have to say it. 2018, they killed a medic, a Palestinian medic, and they fabricated a video showing that it's someone else, that he was a human shield. And then
I would say, Bassem,
can I just like finish
yeah,
that?
but I do want to respond.
And then 2010, they killed Ahmed Oraikat, denied it, then said, it's okay, it's us. 2021, they bombed the media office in Hamas. It's not us, but no, I'm sorry. And then 11th May 2022, Shireen Abu Akleh, a reporter, your colleague, she's Palestinian, American citizen, she was shot in the head. And they provided forensic evidence and even a doctor's video that it was not them, it was Islamic Jihad. How can I expect to believe this regime, especially if the president of Israel comes down with this ridiculous thing? Have you seen that? No. He said, okay. This was reported by Sky News, and it was the funniest thing I've seen so much. This was a Colin Powell moment, but like the cheap edition.
Cheap edition.
Mr. Herzog said, like Isaac Herzog, it's like, we have found evidence on one of the terrorists, a manual to create chemical bombs. And then he showed this, and he showed, and this is, so I just want to say, why would a foot soldier go into enemy with like a manual to chemical bombing? Is that BYOB, bring your own beer, bomb? It's crazy. And what he like have like local ingredients to make, and then this is like, this is a manual of Al-Qaeda, of course, convenient state in Qaeda. And let me read it to you in Arabic because this is funny. So, النشرة الدولية المعنية بالتطوير الذاتي والمعرفي للمجاهدين, which basically say, this is basically like a catalog for self-improvement for mujahideen.
Oh my God.
I know that they have life coaches. So this
Life coaches. You know, I'm sorry. I know people are gonna watch this, like, what are you laughing at? But he displays the information in a very informational standpoint, but he puts a comedic hint on it too. So, we're
So it's not what he said it was, pretty much.
correct.